Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. My name is Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I am joined by my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian, and this is what I get for starting a podcast with a man animal.
Oh, yeah. What would it sound like if there was a podcast co-hosted by a man animal and a cyclo?
Well, I'd have to be like, listen, rat brain, why are you going into Act 2 when we still have more to talk about on the background, rat brain? Man animal rat brain.
That's a pretty good approximation of the
I like it.
quality of dialogue in this film that we're about to discuss.
And that is from the best performer in the movie, I'd say.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think you're right. So in this season of Awesome Movie Year, we're talking about the films of the year 2000, and we are here at our episode on the biggest flop of the year. And we have lucked into, via the various years that we've covered, some of the most famous flops of all time. And this is one of them. It is Battlefield Earth, starring John Travolta as Turl the Cyclo, and based on the classic novel by L. Ron Hubbard.
Well, if you're a Scientologist, it's classic.
Yeah, if you're John Travolta. I think there are some people, I was looking at like the Goodreads page for this book, and there are definitely some people who are maybe overly defensive of the fact that they like this book but are not Scientologists, trying to say like, no, you don't understand. Really, it's a good sci-fi novel. Like, you don't have to be a Scientologist. It's not about Scientology. So it has some kind of fan base, I think.
I mean, as you know, this movie set the precedent for Dune and Dune 2, because this movie only takes the first half of the book. So we never got Battlefield Earth 2, but it could it have been as good as Dune 2? The answer is no.
No, it could not. Yeah, it's not even half the book. I think, according to Wikipedia, claims it's the first 436 pages of the 1,050 page book, which is longer than Dune, the book.
Dave, did you read any of it for us this week?
Oh, yeah, the whole thing, all 1,000.
Dave loves reading books.
Xenu will approve, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. So, yes, this was a passion project, I guess we could say, for John Travolta, who, of course, is one of the most famous Scientologists, and claimed also that it wasn't because of Scientology that he wanted to make this movie, but just because it was his favorite book, and he was at a high point in his career, having made this big comeback with Pulp Fiction and successful movies following that. And respect to him in a way, because it's always great when stars who have that moment of success say, I'm going to use my clout to make the movie that I've always wanted to make. And sometimes you get Battlefield Earth.
Yeah, he basically said, like, hey, if I can't use my power to do this, what can I use my power for, right? So, you know, Josh, we had just talked about John Woo in an earlier episode, and Dave and I both rewatched Face Off, and Travolta is so great in Face Off. And I really think he was on a great run here for a minute. And that's why whenever we talk about him, I'm always like, I still think he's got one left in him, because he did some really great stuff, you know, from the 70s to the early 80s. And then this comeback, I think he really aged into it really well. And I just think old man Travolta, there's something there that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, and I haven't seen Face Off in a long time, but one thing I remember about Face Off is it's a super over-the-top movie, and his performance and Nicolas Cage's performance are both crazy over the top, and they're really at a similar level to what he does in this film. It's just, you know, the context of it is very different.
Yeah, super misguided. Although, like I said, he's easily the best thing in this. So,
yeah.
You know, Josh, you bring up a point that it's such a heightened performance. And like I said, this one is misguided, but like if your heightened performance has to match a Nicolas Cage heightened performance, like how big are you going? And that's some of the brilliance of that movie, which we're not talking about here, is just the way those two are able to capture each other's energy. And I really like Travolta in the 90s. And like I said, I'm rooting for him to do one more, not just because, you know, he grew up in Englewood, New Jersey, next to Teaneck, New Jersey, where I grew up and everything.
And also because you're a Scientologist.
Whoa.
I mean, I think though, that is the thing, is that Face Off, we talked about John Woo and how great a director John Woo is. And because he knows what kind of movie he's making there, all those performances line up and the tone fits. And Roger Christian, director of Battlefield Earth, does not seem to have the same kind of handle on the material here.
It is not well directed, and this Roger Christian is a protege of George Lucas. How much of the blame can we lay at him? I don't know. We know and we'll talk about all the nonsense that went on with like the script development. Obviously, this movie, more than most that we've covered, usually I'm like, smaller budgets, that's fine. People will find a way. But this movie looks terrible. The effects look terrible here.
It really does. And I mean, that's one of the interesting things is that, so we say this is a flop, and officially this movie grossed $29.7 million on its supposed budget of $73 million, which sounds like a big failure and is. But later, there was a lawsuit against Franchise Pictures, which was the primary production company behind this film, from some of their investors, claiming that they had inflated the budget in order to bilk those investors out of money, and that they had only spent $31 million on this film, which would still make it, of course, a box office failure, considering that generally doesn't include the costs of marketing and things like that, but not as big a failure, and also would maybe give you more of a sense of why it looks so terrible.
Yeah, I would think that wouldn't be a failure, except if you look. So Franchise is set up which is an interesting model. Like the company is like you said, Josh, passion projects for big stars who are not able to get them made in other places. So they say, hey, we can make these cheaper than you would if you were at a studio. And this is the business we want to be in. But because these inflated numbers were just terrible here, that they kind of ruined this company. The other movies they released, Josh, Get Carter, The Art of War, 3,000 Miles to Graceland, Angel Eyes, Heist. I don't know if that's the Heist with the Mamet movie, which was good, City by the Sea. And I must have been the Mamet movie because they also did Spartan. They all failed, but the two that did well for them, Josh, The Whole Nine Yards, which got a sequel, and of course, The Boondock Saints.
Yeah, and you don't even mention there, one of their other releases was Ballistic X versus Sever, which is also one of the most famous flops of all time. And
we'll get to it one day.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. It's as if the same like little production company had made like Heaven's Gate and Ishtar.
Right, but again, like you're saying, right? Had they gone in with the actual number, you would have been like, this kind of broke even. It's fine. Like, this is not a flop. It sustains, right? But the other interesting thing I thought was intriguing about this is rumors are that this led to Travolta firing his manager, Jonathan Crane, who had set up the deal. But like, no one else was willing to take the deal. So what else did he want from this guy?
Right. I mean, Travolta is the reason that this movie got made. And the reason that this company picked it up is because it was based around that idea of picking up celebrity passion projects or something that had a star attached to it and couldn't get made any other way. So it was only because Travolta was trying so hard to get this made that Franchise Pictures even came aboard in the first place.
Exactly. They are the star passion project vehicle, but I don't think that's a bad model if you actually keep the budgets.
Find good movies to make, but maybe it turned out that there was a reason that these stars were having trouble getting these movies made.
Right. There are even rumors that like Tom Cruise, the other most famous Scientologist, called like studios and was like, I don't think this is the best idea for you to make this. He denies that. So
yeah, but I was wondering as I was watching this movie, like, where are the other famous Scientologists? You would think, especially at this time, like a lot of these people like Leah Remini, for example, who have since like left Scientology or denounced Scientology, they were all involved at this time in Scientology. Like, other than Kelly Preston, John Travolta's wife, who has a little one-scene role, where are the rest of the celebrity Scientologists showing up to support L. Ron Hubbard?
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Where is David Miscavige's wife, Josh? Why don't you answer that one?
Yeah, that's a good question. That could be a whole podcast series. And
I
probably is.
Yeah, I think Leah Remini is probably the one who spearheaded it.
Yeah, but why wasn't she on board? Where's the stellar presence of Danny Masterson or Laura Prepon in this film, or Mimi Rogers? You know, none of them are around here.
Ooh, I like some Mimi Rogers.
Yeah. So, regardless, the impression of this movie is as a giant failure, and
because it
is, yes. But we can say that maybe because of fraud, it didn't lose as much money as it was purported to have lost for many years when it was first released. It was nominated for 9 Razzies, and as we say, the Razzies are stupid and problematic, but are an indication of what is considered terrible in a given year. It was nominated for Worst Picture, Worst Director, Worst Actor for John Travolta, along with his performance in a movie called Lucky Numbers that I've never seen. Have you seen this?
No, I remember the box cover. I think, this is off the top of my head, Josh. I believe Lisa Kudrow was the co-star of that. Because I remember the box cover from when I worked at Blockbuster Video.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Maybe I did see that movie.
Should have done a double feature on those two for this episode. Also, Worst Supporting Actor for Barry Pepper, Worst Supporting Actress for Kelly Preston, who, as I said, is only in one scene. Worst Screenplay, and in one of the indicators of the Razzies just piling on for no reason, it also won Worst Screen Couple for, quote, John Travolta and anyone sharing the screen with him. Come on.
And it won the worst drama of the first 25 years of the Razzies.
Yes, and another retrospective, won 2 retrospective awards, I think Worst Picture of the Decade or something like that in 2009. The only Razzie it was nominated for and didn't win was Worst Supporting Actor for Forrest Whitaker, who of course lost to Barry Pepper. And it held the record for the most Razzies until Jack and Jill came along and won 10 Razzies.
I never saw Jack and Jill.
Really? You're such a Sandler fan and you never saw Jack and Jill?
I never did either, actually.
Maybe that's why I'm still.
How am I the one of the 3 of us who has seen Jack and Jill? That is astonishing.
Can you do an impression of it?
No, I can't. But the Dunkachino, and it's certainly a mind-boggling film along the lines of this one. I will say. So you guys should definitely watch Jack and Jill.
Nice.
But
we got a lot of movies to watch together, Dave.
Yeah, I know.
Lucky Numbers and Jack and Jill. Quite a marathon of awfulness coming up for you guys. Audiences did not care for this. It got a D+ cinema score from the audience polling service, and slightly higher, honestly, than I thought it might have. But that's from the people who were out there on opening night excited to watch this. That's how much they disliked it. Of course, critics also not into this film. It got 2 thumbs down from Ebert and Roper, or as Ebert was saying in the episode, like way down. He said way
nice.
A lot. And in his written review, Roger Ebert said, Battlefield Earth was written in 1980 by L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology. The film contains no evidence of Scientology or any other system of thought. It is shapeless and senseless, without a compelling plot or characters we care for in the slightest. The director, Roger Christian, has learned from better films that directors sometimes tilt their cameras, but he has not learned why. Some movies run off the rails. This one is like the train crash in The Fugitive. I watched it in mounting gloom, realizing I was witnessing something historic, a film that for decades to come will be the punchline of jokes about bad movies.
Well, I pulled an Ebert quote also, Josh. He said this movie is like taking a bus trip with someone who has needed a bath for a long time. It's not merely bad, it's unpleasant in a hostile way. I watched it. Yeah, there you go. I watched it with mounting gloom, realizing that I was witnessing something historic, a film that for decades will come to be the punchlines of jokes about bad movies. So we got the same second half of the quote, Josh.
That's good that we've repeated it for emphasis, though.
You take a bath recently, Josh?
I usually take a shower, not a bath, but I'm also not taking any bus rides. I would certainly make sure to have good hygiene if I was going to be around other people. So, yeah, Ebert, I feel like Ebert spent an inordinate amount of time on the smelliness or the perceived smelliness of like the cyclos as well in his review. I don't know what Ebert's issue is with body odors there.
I mean, it's a post-apocalyptic world. Maybe they need it for defense.
Yeah, I don't know. And I would think in this world that the cyclos probably have access to, modern hygiene technology. And it's the humans, really, the man animals, if you will, who are not taking showers because they're living out in the wilderness.
Gorilla's breath.
Was that one? I don't recall.
No, I'm just saying.
New one.
He's made one.
Rat brain, you smell like gorilla's breath.
Jason's busy writing Battlefield Earth 2.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, well, that someone has to do it. So
no one has to do that. Please.
Okay,
please,
then I'll
no.
stop.
Yeah. So Rita Kempley in the Washington Post said, 1 million monkeys with 1 million crayons would be hard pressed in 1 million years to create anything as cretinous as Battlefield Earth. This film version of L. Ron Hubbard's futuristic novel is so breathtakingly awful in concept and execution, it wouldn't tax the smarts of a troglodyte. And when it comes to star John Travolta's performance, well, hammy William Shatner's hairpiece is more convincing. The movie, like Roger Christian's drab direction, is as ugly as the Cyclodian males, glowering, humorless, clumsily rendered with a color scheme that screams bruised and abused. They don't even have any really groovy post-apocalyptic fashions. At least Waterworld had that to offer.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's
Have
interesting.
you seen Waterworld?
I did. I saw it in the theater, I think. So,
all right.
And supposedly Waterworld as IP has made money back over the years, but
hey, why not?
I don't know. It's funny because she's like, it wouldn't tax the smarts of a troglodyte. And I'm like, wait, do I know what a troglodyte is? Let me think of that out. So let's figure that one out right there. Yeah. No, but she makes a good point about the look. It's drab and there's, no color correction apparently. And not good is what I'm saying. But, we're piling on. But Roger Christian has an Oscar, right? So, I mean, he's not an idiot who doesn't know how to do stuff. Like I said, George Lucas handpicked him and suggested him for this movie. So, he has an Oscar for Best Art Direction on Star Wars. And he also was nominated for his work on Alien. It's not like this guy doesn't know stuff. So I don't know what happened here.
Yeah, maybe he should have been the art director on this film and not the director. Because he's not the art director. Someone else is in that position and not doing a very good job of it, really. And he's overseeing that and not succeeding at it.
You're saying because he's directing, he lost all of his art direction instincts?
I'm saying that maybe his skills are limited to that one particular lane. And then he outsourced that or delegated that to someone else who wasn't as good. And yeah, he lost control of the big picture there, maybe. Or not, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think like you said, this movie, you can excuse certain things from low budgets, and maybe this movie had a lower budget than it appeared to, but either way, whatever the budget is, Roger Christian is doing a poor job of applying it and making the movie look good with the resources that he's given.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, when we do this research, we want to see who are running these departments. And, it's like, Giles Nutjins, who I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I think I am, is the director of photography. And this movie looks terrible. But he did Enola Holmes, which looks good. He did Hell or High Water, which is amazing. So he said the overuse of color filters and Dutch angles wasn't his idea. And it was the smallest lighting budget he ever had worked with. But I feel like, I don't know, man, this is a quality DP who screwed the pooch on this one, Josh.
Right. Or, as you said, if it wasn't his idea, he had a director who said, shoot it this way. And maybe he was like, really? Are you sure? And ultimately, the director is in charge. And he says, do it this way. And you do it that way. Yeah.
Maybe there was no pooch screwing from Nutjins.
No, it was all Roger Christian. But yeah, the Dutch angles are, as Ebert kind of says there, it's like, this is a thing that happens in films. And that maybe, I think, it was Roger Christian or someone said that they wanted to do as a way to kind of recall, old serials or, pulp adventure stuff. And like, sure, but you have to know when to do it and when not to do it. It's the same as the wipes, the transitional wipes, which is something that George Lucas uses to great effect in the Star Wars movies because Lucas knows when to use it and when not to use it. And Roger Christian is just like, what if every time we went to a new scene, no matter why, we had a transitional wipe? and
they
no
are
other kind of transition.
terrible and amateurish. And I feel like if he was going all in on this, he should have had like star wipe, vertical wipe, like shake wipe, like just throw all the different wipes you could find in After Effects on there,
right?
As opposed to just the same split screening wipe that's going, it's a transition, but it just really felt like, this guy took a class at a community college for, continuing education. And the final project was like, how are you going to edit from one scene to the next? And he's like, well, I got my wipes ready to go.
Yeah. At one point, there's a wipe between like two dialogue scenes where the dialogue just continues from one scene to another. It's so confusing.
That would be like, because, these Dutch angles, these tilted angles. What if he had like done a shot and started a Dutch angle and then in the middle of the shot tilted it the exact other way just to Dutch it the other side?
Amazing.
I was just watching that scene. I was like, wait, they're just having the same conversation in a different location and you had a wipe here in the middle of it. Why? Why is this happening?
That is how I felt for 2 hours. Why is this happening?
Yeah.
But again, these are the questions that Scientologists are trying to answer in the original book, aren't they, Josh?
The big questions in life, yes.
Yeah.
So we are piling on, but one more to pile on here.
Oh, I thought you were going to be like, but we do have one good review from David Miscavige.
Yeah, exactly. From Scientology Weekly. No, I'm not sure if there's anything like that, but if there is, I didn't research it extensively enough. No, we've got Elvis Mitchell in the New York Times who said, quote, "Man is an endangered species," announces one of the titles at the beginning of the sci-fi lump Battlefield Earth. And after about 20 minutes of this amateurish picture, extinction doesn't seem like such a bad idea. Sitting through it is like watching the most expensively mounted high school play of all time. The film is stocked with evil aliens who, in their padded body stockings, plastic armor-like fittings, and matted hair extensions, resemble nothing so much as members of Gwar, the metal rock parodists that Beavis and Butthead loved. It may be a bit early to make such judgments, but Battlefield Earth may well turn out to be the worst movie of this century.
Right. He did call it the worst movie of the century. He also called it Plan 9 from Outer Space for a New Generation.
What I think is fascinating is that all these critics right away, they're like, oh, this is one of the worst movies ever. And they were right. It held up with that reputation. I just think that's impressive. I would be really hesitant as a critic to say that a movie that opened like next week that I hated was like, oh, this is going to be regarded as one of the worst movies of all time. Like, I can't say that, but these people were confident and correct.
No, I could say it. I literally just said recently that I think Conor McGregor gives the worst performance of the century in Roadhouse. And I feel like that's going to hold up, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it'll hold up in the sense that you'll stand by your opinion, but will that become some sort of like worldwide consensus opinion?
Not when me and Joe Black are out there.
Right.
Yeah, I got these rat brains I got to deal with, Josh. So.
You do indeed. So it's interesting, going back again to the background of Roger Christian, like you said, he started as an art director, production designer, worked on stuff like Star Wars and Alien. And I watched one of his early films as a director, the 1980 short film Black Angel, which was commissioned by George Lucas as a companion piece for The Empire Strikes Back. It's a 25-minute kind of medieval fantasy adventure thing, and it played in theaters in front of The Empire Strikes Back, not in the US, but in some other countries. And, you can imagine Lucas with his affinity for those old-time, movie lineups would have wanted something that resembled that, like, oh, here's a little short, and now here's our feature, and it's all a throwback thing. And it's fine. It's certainly not something that makes you think, oh, this guy is going to direct one of the worst movies of all time.
Yeah, it's interesting because we always try to, watch other pieces like you just mentioned from the filmmakers, and Roger Christian's made other feature films. They're not easy to find, Josh.
Yeah, he didn't exactly have a stellar career. I mean, he continued to have a career. This didn't kill his career, and he'd made movies before this as well. But it's not like he was a brilliant filmmaker who made a mistake here. His filmography is full of movies that don't seem to be particularly beloved, although none of them as hated as this film. So, Jason, given that you saw Waterworld in the theater, did you see this in the theater?
No, Josh, I didn't. I do remember the commercials, and I remember that laugh that we see at Travolta doing at the end of the movie was a big part of the commercial campaign where he just like that.
That didn't get you in the theater?
No, I had no desire to see the worst film of the century as predicted at the beginning of the century.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because I don't remember like whether I wanted to see this, because this is the kind of thing that I probably would have wanted to see. And I was big into sci-fi movies and probably would have, I didn't read this book, but might have, had read similar books. But I think you're right that before it came out, it had this reputation as this like pending disaster. And all those reviews said that. And I think even by opening day, the reason to see this would have been like just to see what kind of train wreck it was. And that wasn't something that obviously I was going to do.
I think had they leaned into that, like we talked about with Geely, they would have made more money.
Maybe so. Dave, you totally saw this in the theater, didn't you?
Well, I was trying to remember that. I think knowing that it had that reputation right from the get-go, I might have went and saw this like very drunk. Because I don't remember actually watching it before, but I feel like I definitely did. Like, there's no way I would have missed this.
Yeah, it seems like even then, pre The Room, this was your kind of thing to go do.
Yeah, I'm all in. Let's go have a good time. Let's laugh with our friends and make fun of the movie. So, yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to say about the background of this movie, Jason?
Josh, I will give you a quote from noted filmmaker Jon Stewart, the comedian who's made a few movies.
He has made films.
Yeah. He called it a cross between Star Wars and the smell of ass.
all these commentaries about the smelliness. We're not in smell-o-vision here. This isn't a John Waters movie. I don't know where people get this from, but that is one way to put it. So
I mean, there are so many crazy quotes from Travolta. It's like Pulp Fiction for the year 3000, like Star Wars, but only better. And I'm fine with him going nuts, like, and trying to sell the movie. But I did find it offensive when he said it's like Schindler's List of science fiction films.
I feel like even if it was good, right? Even if you had made a solid sci-fi movie, none of those comparisons are going to do you any favors. Like, just be quiet about that.
If only the idiots during COVID had learned from Travolta, don't compare yourself to the Holocaust.
Yeah. On that note, we'll come back and talk some of our general thoughts on Battlefield Earth. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of the year 2000, we are talking about the biggest flop of the year and one of the most notorious flops of all time, Battlefield Earth. And when I say that, I feel like some of the other movies that we've talked about that are really, really famous failures, like Heaven's Gate and Ishtar, whether we personally like them or not, have been extensively rehabilitated by fans who genuinely think that they're good movies. And no one thinks that about Battlefield Earth.
No, it's interesting. I mean, you can compare things to both. Like, actually, you mentioned, I remember in the Heaven's Gate episode when you were talking about how you found the lighting and cinematography in that kind of final battle sequence disorienting and confusing. Dude, the fight scenes in this, in like the end of Act 2, I'm like, who is fighting who? Where are these people? Why do they all look exactly the same? What is happening here? It is terrible, Josh.
Yeah, and they make the choice to have all the humans and all the cyclos each dress exactly the same way and have the exact same hairstyles, right? Mm-hmm. So you essentially just have two kinds of character looks. And it's, and none of these characters, other than maybe Travolta's character, Turl, have any kind of personality that we can really discern. So there's nothing, to tell them apart or to figure out who, if we theoretically might even care about these characters, whether they're particularly in danger or not.
You're right, because these guys, the cyclos are supposed to be 9 feet tall, right? Yeah. And I know Travolta was on like 4 foot stilts a lot on this thing, but for the most part, they don't look any taller than the humans.
No, they're just wearing big platform boots, which I'm sure was part of it. But it's like, well, unless they have these weird shaped feet with these incredibly long, like soles of their feet, then that's just what they're wearing. It's not how tall they actually are.
Because we know Travolta invested millions of his own in this, and we know that the budget wasn't as high as he wanted. So maybe for the Cyclos, he just got out all of his shoes from the Saturday Night Fever era and lent them to the other Cyclo actors.
It could be. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, having not read the book, how many other aspects of the Cyclos, like their weird dreadlock kind of hair and their claw-like hands. I was trying to see, do they have 6 fingers on their hands? At certain points, it looked like they had an extra like prosthetic finger, but I wasn't sure.
They even mentioned that in some scenes, Travolta has a different amount of, fingers.
So that was a continuity error.
Yeah, it is funny. We have the concert out here, Reggae in the Desert. This would be like reggae in the junkyard or something like that. They all look like they're dressed to go to reggae in Slab City or whatever it is. I don't know. It's terrible looking, Josh, the whole thing.
Yeah, it really is. And again, whether that's like right out of the book description or it's an interpretation that Roger Christian or the screenwriters or the production or the costume and hairstyle designers brought to it, whoever's idea it was a very bad idea. And they don't look scary either. I mean, I think if you wanted to theoretically take this movie seriously, the Cyclos should be scary, and they're not at all scary.
They're not. Look, we've said Travolta's name a lot, and like I said, I think he's out there. It's not great, but he's easily the best thing in this. Forrest Whitaker, who we've talked about on the show before, is a great actor. This might be the worst performance of his career.
I mean, Travolta is clearly throwing himself fully into this role. And he's like, I'm going to play a maniacal villain and I'm going to give it everything that I've got, which makes sense because this is his passion project. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that Forrest Whitaker's performance is good, but it seems like he's more subdued because maybe he's trying to make it a character of some kind. And obviously that's a futile effort, but he's not doing what Travolta is doing. He's not just going over the top.
He's just talking like this in a deeper voice for some reason, but I don't feel anything from him. And we've seen him, in the Star Wars saga, like he did a much better job. You know what I mean? So,
Sure.
So, I mean, but this is the point. I think every performance is bad in this movie. And does that mean all the actors are bad? No, this also goes back to the direction. Barry Pepper is almost unwatchable in this film. Like, I mean, you want to talk about bad performances? You could put that up there with the worst performances of the century easily.
Yeah, and he's meant to be like
the hero,
right?
The charismatic hero,
the savior of humanity. He's John Connor. He's Luke Skywalker. Whatever. And right, he has no charisma whatsoever. And part of it too, though, like you said, he can be a good actor. I think it does go back to the direction and also to the conception of the character. Again, just looking at Goodreads, even the people who are positive about this book say how Johnny is this ridiculous, like, infallible character who is just good at everything and has no flaws and can't do anything wrong. And that's not an interesting person to watch. So, I mean, I think there's not much of a character for him to play. We don't really know anything about Johnny's like personality that makes us care about whether, I mean, forget whether he can save humanity, just whether he can save himself, whether he can escape from captivity with the Cyclos or whatever. None of it is interesting at all.
Okay, fair, but he did sign on to play this role. I mean, so he must have read the script.
You got to work, right?
Right, but I'm saying if you're doing that, even if there's not much meat on what's there, you can still create your own backstory. You can create whatever inner conflicts you want, or you can at least deliver lines with passion and charisma.
Yeah, I mean, he's not doing a good job. I'm just trying to spread the blame around. I'm not trying to make him blameless. I'm saying that he's not the only one who should take the blame.
I agree. I just think it's like one of the worst performances I've ever seen in a movie of any time.
Is it worse than Conor McGregor in Roadhouse?
It's less charismatic. I'll say that much. Is it worse? I don't know.
They are both performances from this century.
Yeah. Now we're in a real battle, McGregor versus. But Josh, even like the first writer was J.D. Shapiro, who wrote on Robin Hood Men in Tights and Charles in Charge.
Really, the credits that you want for the writer of your sci-fi epic.
No one really wanted this movie, right? So it was rewritten after that by a guy named Corey Mandell, who has no other credits that I think Travolta handpicked, or if he has any credits, they weren't enough for me to at least write any of them down. So, and Shapiro said that he didn't even recognize the movie when he saw it. He accepted his golden raspberry, and he said, the only time I saw the movie was at the premiere, which was one too many times. Looking back at this movie with fresh eyes, I can't help but be strangely proud of it because of all the sucky movies, mine is the suckiest. So that's a good attitude.
Yeah, and I feel like because he is able to distance himself from it, he can be like, yeah, it sucks, but it wasn't really my fault that it sucked, even though I'm sure he participated in the sucking.
Yeah, I mean, well, I would agree, Josh. I don't know. I mean, how much freedom would any writer have on this, though? Because it's based on a book by the creator of a religion that the star and producer is dedicated to. So how much leeway is he going to have on the film? Well, my guess is that Shapiro took a little more leeway than they wanted, and then Travolta had Mandel water it down to make it more Scientology friendly.
And that may be the case. We'll never know. And I don't think anyone is clamoring to read the original screenplay draft of Battlefield Earth. So we're not going to find that out. But should we like run through the plot of this movie? Does anybody care what the plot is? We got the
Good luck, rat brain.
The year 3000, right? It's the year 3000, and man is an endangered species, as the title card says at the beginning. And the Cyclos, who are the aliens, have taken over the Earth, which they did in 9 minutes, apparently. And humans some of them are enslaved, but some of them are just living out in the wilderness, and there aren't very many, but we don't know how many there are. And Johnny Good Boy, Barry Pepper, right? That's his literal name. That's his literal name. Okay. He's part of one of these like nomadic tribes, right? They're not enslaved, right? They're living their lives, but they've reverted to sort of caveman level, or hunter-gathering kind of society. And
right. But real fast, I want to say, like, they're living their lives in the same way people live their lives in The Last of Us. They have to always be aware that they could be killed, or in this case, enslaved by, the post-apocalyptic beings, in this case, the Cyclos.
Right. But then Johnny deliberately, he's like, I don't believe they're really that dangerous. I'm going to go find them. And he leaves the encampment of his people, and he goes to Denver, the hotbed of all post-apocalyptic stories, which is apparently like the Cyclo headquarters on Earth or whatever, and gets captured. And then he becomes this leader of the enslaved humans. And he goes from a caveman who doesn't even understand like the basics of biology or how things like nature, and then he's fucking teaching people how to fly fighter jets by the end of the movie, which I'm pretty sure is like a month later.
Well, Josh, that's because they put him in the learning machine. So he learned all these things in the learning machine. God, we should put you in a learning machine so you can understand this movie.
But no one else was in the learning machine, right? Am
right.
I wrong about this?
No, you're right. They chose him, the Cyclos and Turl chose him because this way they were like, hey, we're going to set this whole plan up. The other side of it is that Turl is outposted here on crap ass Earth that he hates, and he wants to get back to his planet because he thinks he's due for a promotion. And then
the Cyclos are all like Michael Scott in The Office. They're like an entire race of Michael Scotts.
So they're like, hey, you know what? We said you only had to do 5 Earth cycles, but guess what, Turl? Now you have to do 50 Earth cycles and maybe more. So deal with that, Turl. So Turl comes up with this whole plan to get the man animals, the humans, to do the mining for him in the mining hotbed of Denver, as you mentioned. And what he's really doing is he's going to have them mine, but he's going to steal a lot of money so that he's going to be able to bribe his way off of Earth, if I'm not mistaken.
So, but like, why do the Cyclos want gold in the first place?
Money.
But their money is credits, right? They refer to this multiple times as like, oh, it's going to cost this many credits, or I'll bet you this many credits. And like, so do the Cyclos operate on the gold standard?
Oh, yeah. It's much like the mercantile system.
I mean, it's all just so, it's this weird combination of like, you know, evil apocalyptic aliens and like corporate middle management. You know, he keeps talking about the home office. Oh, we're going to send this back to the home office. And like, what the hell kind of alien race is this?
It's, they've clearly studied the Spanish Armada and, you know, when Spain was running the seas and how they colonized all the indigenous peoples all around the world because of the gold and boats. And leave me alone. I don't have an answer for you, Josh. It's a mess.
And so Turl wants all this gold.
Turl,
yeah. And he gets Johnny Goodboy, the man animal, to lead the expedition.
Just think about what you said right
there. Yeah. He gets Johnny to lead the expedition with the other man animals who have not been through the learning machine, right? So Johnny is just like teaching them all this shit himself.
Well, had they all been through the learning machine, maybe they could have created a rebellion. But if only one of them did, then how could they have a rebellion without learning, Josh?
Indeed, yeah. But Johnny must be the world's greatest teacher, because suddenly they all seem basically at the same level of knowledge, when before they were like, what is big thing in sky? Now they like understand how everything works. They're going to mine the gold that's on like the side of a cliff somehow, I guess. And Johnny's like, no. We need the time to train ourselves for the rebellion. So instead, I read about this place called Fort Knox, where there's a bunch of gold already there. So we're going to fly to Fort Knox and take the gold bars from Fort Knox and give those to Turl and be like, look, we mined this from this mountain. And Turl's going to buy it. And the weirdest, saddest thing is that Johnny is right. Turl's just like, he's like, why did you make this into gold bars? And Johnny's like, oh, well, you know, I don't know. We thought you'd like it that way. And Turl's like, oh, all right.
Yeah, they didn't want it as dust. That wouldn't be up to Turl and the Cyclos standards.
And then Turl doesn't just like look over his shoulder to see that all the gold in the rock is still there.
Dude, I'm with you. I mean, I know Johnny kept half the people there so they could fake them out. Like, oh, they're mining. But wouldn't Turl have noticed that, hey, half the people are missing? I mean, Turl is clearly, and I don't know how to explain this, but I guess as of this week's news, Turl was doing some P. Diddy type filming of everybody without their consent, I guess you would say. Mm-hmm. But it's like he filmed everyone so he could have advantages over them. But
leverage. He wants leverage.
Leverage.
But apparently he didn't film the mining places enough. Or like maybe he only had a camera in one spot because he didn't notice that half the people were at Fort Knox at that point in time.
And he does, like, he very specifically, when he drops them off, he's like, I'm not going to be here, but I'm watching. And he shows the like little, you know, tablet thingy or whatever he's got with his camera there. But as you said, he must have put the camera in the worst possible location because he didn't notice that they flew off to Fort Knox.
And yet he's smart enough to catch Kerr, the Forrest Whitaker character, trying to get over on him a few times with like different videos and everything.
Forrest Whitaker.
Ayo.
Yeah, that's Turl level humor right there.
You should throw that joke in the Turlet.
Yeah. But that's Ray. I feel like if you wanted to do some kind of drinking game for this movie and you drank every time Turl said leverage, you would be like Dave going to see this movie in the theater very quickly.
Mm-hmm. I think man animal was said 28 times in the movie, but I got a feeling that rat brain was said more than that.
Yeah,
I think so too.
That is one. And I love that too. This is the ridiculousness. I noticed this, right? So man animal is the cyclo term for humans. Like they don't know that word. But then at least one point in the movie, Turl just refers to them as humans. Like where is the script supervision here?
I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. But even, back to Forrest Whitaker, even he said he regrets participating in this film.
Well, of course he does.
Yeah. It's bad.
It is bad. I mean, I don't know if we need to go through. One other thing that really bugged me, like the climax of the film, right? Johnny, not only does he take them to Fort Knox, but then he also takes them to some other military base where like the 1,000-year-old flight simulators are just in perfect working condition and the fighter jets, right? And he's like, oh yeah, just go in the flight simulator and learn how to fly some fighter jets, right? And they do. And so they have this big final battle with the Cyclos. And the idea is that they're going to destroy this sort of covering that the Cyclos have over Denver because they can't breathe Earth air.
Yeah, it's right, exactly.
And so the whole thing is that Johnny's like best buddy, Kim Coates, who also gives an incredibly bad performance in this film, is going to blow up this thing so that the Cyclos cannot breathe and then they die. And he keeps saying, I'm going to blow the dome. When is it time to blow the dome? Why, I'm going to blow the dome. It is not a dome. It is a even remotely dome-shaped structure. This really bugged me.
I could see that. Josh, am I conflating this with another movie, or am I not mistaken? Did he use slow motion in every fucking shot in the entire film? What was it goes back to the Dutch angles. If you're doing it all the time, it has no meaning. Literally, I think this movie would have been 34 minutes long had it not been in slow motion the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, the Dutch angles are definitely the most noticeable. But yeah, I mean, all of the visual, there's one point too where, we talk about the color palette. Like, I think it's when early in the film when Johnny and he meets Kim Coates and some of these other humans and they're in the like abandoned mall and all of a sudden everything is green. And I was like, did we go somewhere else? What's happening? And it's just because the Cyclos show up and there's no like source for this lighting. It's just like Roger Christian was like, no, the Cyclos are there, so it's green. And it just confuses the viewer.
Well, the whole thing is confusing. You're talking about that big battle at the end. And I kind of joked earlier that a lot of this feels like, end of semester project. Dude, talk about the CGI in this thing. You would never, ever, ever, ever want to use CGI for anything if this was the example of what CGI could be. It is garbage city.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And really, like, what this reminded me of as I was watching it was, you recall when we did our episode, another flop on John Carter, which looks like a masterpiece, first of all, relevant to this film. But I wasn't thinking of John Carter. What I was thinking of was the Asylum mockbuster version of John Carter that I had watched when we did that episode starring Antonio Sabato Jr. And this really looks like one of these direct-to-video, like, no-budget sci-fi movies that come out these days, and I see a shocking number of these for various work purposes. And there's so many hallmarks of those kinds of movies. Another thing that we have in this movie is like, there's like 4 sets or something in the like Cyclo base, and all of them are rooms with no defined purpose. And just for the sake of the characters to like stand in a couple different rooms to yell at each other. Like, we built a couple sets and they're just going to stand here. And that's very much out of these straight to VOD movies.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. There's no excuse for that, because no matter what your budget is, you can put a fucking poster on a wall or put a desk in a room, right, to like show some separation. So I don't care, look, even if it was 35 million, you can't tell me that you've never seen a movie that has been set decorated for $35 million, right? Like, I don't know if it was laziness or just ineptitude, but yeah, literally there is not one good aspect of this film from a technical standpoint.
Yeah, I think that's what's frustrating, because you can say, all right, this is based on a crappy novel that Travolta was, suckered into because of Scientology, and the acting is bad, but the craftsmanship should be better with the people involved in it. There really should be no reason that it's quite this terrible.
I bet you've seen Asylum movies that look way better than this.
That's a tough one. But certainly they don't look worse than this necessarily. So I want to give Dave a shot here, because Dave kind of liked this, I think, or parts of it at least.
Yeah, like is relative. Like movies like John Carter, which I genuinely did like, even though it's a big flop and considered a terrible movie. This isn't that. This is a bad movie, no doubt about it. But I had so much fun laughing at John Travolta. Every time he is on screen, I was dying. So this is a midnight movie. This is something to have fun with your friends watching. But there is a definite separation between misunderstood, flop or whatever, and bad movie like this. This is a bad movie.
Yeah, it is a bad movie. I agree. But I mean, I am not entirely in disagreement with you, because I was also kind of amused at times by Travolta's performance. And it's the kind of performance that if this weren't something that he risked everything in his career to make and put millions of dollars of his own money into, that you would say like, oh, he's kind of taking the piss here. But there's no way that he was. Right. I don't even know what's going on with it. But like, Jason, your impressions are accurate. And the 87th time he says rat brain is kind of funny.
Yeah. The only thing I remembered from this movie from last time was our friend the bartender. That line has stuck with me all these years, but that was about it.
Hey, just none of it works at any aspect for me. And, I like bad movies that are good, like The Room, I go for, but this is a bad movie that's bad.
Yeah, see, I mean, to me, I'm like, I got the same amusement out of watching this as I did out of The Room, which is very little. But you can imagine Tommy Wiseau playing Turl. I feel like that's something.
That would be amazing.
Absolutely.
Or if he had played, Johnny, that would have been good.
Well, he did play Johnny in The Room.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
Oh, hi, Turl.
Perfect. So I feel like I could go on. There's like so many little things about this that are absurd, but we might as well just give it a rating, right? Should we rate it out of 5 rat brains?
Sure. Cyclos, whatever you want. So one cyclo for me. That's all it gets. And I'm not going to fall for your crap where you tell me to be generous. 1.
No, I wouldn't tell you to be generous. I'm going to give it 1.5 because I did find some amusement, but I certainly wouldn't try to argue that anyone should rate this highly. But Dave will anyway, right, Dave?
Yeah, 4 stars from me.
2.5 from me. But yeah, I couldn't. If it was a half hour shorter, maybe I could go with the so bad it's good, but it's just too bad.
It would have been if not every shot was in slow motion.
You're 100% right on that, by the way.
Yeah. We'll come back and talk about the legacy of Battlefield Earth. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of the year 2000, we are talking about the flop of the year, Battlefield Earth. And, the reputation, as we kind of mentioned early on, is that it was exactly what people thought it was. They said it's going to be known as one of the worst movies ever made, and it is known as one of the worst movies ever made. It's still known that way. It hasn't been rehabilitated. There was no sequel. There's no talk of remaking it. I think everyone involved just wants to forget that it even exists.
Nope, you are wrong. Travolta says that even though that the critics didn't like it, he knows a lot of people out there liked it, and that's what's important to him, Josh.
I mean, but did he say that like a month after it came out, or did he say that like yesterday?
We'll have to ask him. I don't have an answer to that.
I feel like even Travolta now would not attempt to defend this movie.
When we were talking about reviews, I found this interesting. Mean Magazine. You ever read Mean Magazine, Josh?
No.
MEAN?
No.
The staffers got a hold of the script and they changed the title to Dark Forces, changed the name of the writer to Desmond Finch, and circulated it to readers at major Hollywood film production companies. And they trashed it too.
Yeah, I mean,
not knowing that it was that.
I feel like that's a lot of effort to go through to just say that this is a poorly written movie, which is obvious on the face of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're talking about what was supposed to become of this. It was supposed to be a 2-part movie. We know that. There was supposed to be like a 12-episode manga series. And I'm glad none of those things happened.
Yeah, I did not read the book, but I was curious, as I said, and went to Goodreads and looked at responses. And it seems like the one thing I will say for this film is that the end feels like an ending. That like, if I didn't know this was only half the book, I would accept that that was the end of a story. But apparently, as the book goes on, not only does Johnny defeat the Cyclos in the world's most anticlimactic nuclear explosion, by the way, but he apparently like goes on to become the conqueror of the whole galaxy, and Johnny Goodboy is now the ruler of the universe by the end of the book.
That sounds a lot like what's going to happen with Dune coming up,
right? Right, it does. And so L. Ron Hubbard ripping off both Star Wars and Dune.
But thankfully not Schindler's List John Travolta.
Yeah.
And Josh, I was wrong. It was going to be 13 one-hour animated segments.
Yeah, that's not, I mean, I wonder if someone at some point will attempt to say like, no, this was a good book and we're going to make a real like faithful adaptation that will, put the proper resources into. I feel like this is too like radioactive for anyone to even attempt that.
Well, a lot of that is the connection to Scientology, and there was a lot of talk that there were secret Scientology positive messages in here. If they were, they didn't work on me.
No, I don't think they worked on anyone. Yeah, I mean, I think even more so now, like, as I was saying earlier, at the time, there were far more like celebrity Scientologists that could have been involved in this. And now it seems like almost all of the celebrity Scientologists, with the exception of like Travolta and Tom Cruise and maybe Elizabeth Moss, have like either quietly left Scientology or loudly left Scientology like Leah Remini did. So it's certainly more toxic now.
Yeah. Or they're in jail.
or that. Either way, it's not a good thing.
But I just want to say, like, look, just because someday, like, I'm not a Scientologist or a fan of them, but if you were like, hey, this is a dope book written by a well-known author, like, go for it. I'm all for like a crazy sci-fi movie based on your religion or whatever, if you can make it awesome, but they didn't do any of that.
No, I mean, and I think the thing is that this is not an awesome book. Right? I mean, despite the fact that it does have a handful of fans, it's not like Dune or something like that. It's not as if Frank Herbert wrote Dune and then went on to found some weird religion, but people still love the book that he wrote. People didn't love this book. And in fact, this book was written far after the founding of Scientology.
Right.
And so this was definitely tailored toward Scientologists promoting it. And so I don't think that that is the case. I think you're right that it could be something like that, but that's not what's going on.
Well, let me ask you a question. And I don't know if you caught this in your research, but Travolta originally approached Quentin Tarantino to direct this film. Now, Quentin Tarantino, what are you thinking? Why didn't you make this?
Yeah, of course.
Tarantino at one point was going to maybe direct a Star Trek movie. So he does have some affinity for sci-fi, but he made the right choice here.
I have to agree with you, sadly, Josh. Who would you have direct this today? We mentioned Dune, but like Denis Villeneuve is not going to do it. Who would do this?
Well, the thing is that no one would do it. I mean, I think in a way, even if George Lucas endorsed Roger Christian, he wasn't exactly a high-profile director. Is that the only person you're going to get for something like this is someone who just needs the work? You're not going to get someone on the level of Denis Villeneuve or whatever. Christopher Nolan is not going to direct the Battlefield Earth remake.
That would be a good follow-up to Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Roger Christian did continue having a career, is mostly kind of B-level films. His most recent directing credit is for a Christian movie starring Kevin Sorbo. So that's where he ended up. He also just needed to work.
That's fine. Good for him.
Yeah.
Dutch angles.
Right. I don't know if there are any Dutch angles in that. He was at one point trying to crowdfund a feature film version of that short film, Black Angel, which seems to be the only work of his that has any kind of genuine fan following. So, presumably because of the Star Wars connection. And so he was going back, but it doesn't seem like that ever.
But he has no
out.
Fans. So
yeah,
that's
unfortunately
the end of that.
Not. Yeah.
Too bad, feller. Did you know that L. Ron Hubbard actually wrote a screenplay for this also?
I think that was part of the earlier development of it. Yeah.
Right.
But that never got made either. And I'm surprised that I could see that being published by, Scientology, like, oh, if only they had used the brilliant screenplay by our beloved founder, then this would have been the greatest movie of all time or something.
That would be exciting. I can't wait till, Martin Scorsese makes Dianetics the movie.
Oh, yeah.
We've talked about Travolta a couple times before, and this didn't ruin his career, but this definitely was kind of the end of that big comeback era. But he still had some big movie star roles. I mean, Hairspray and Wild Hogs, Be Cool. I mean, those are maybe not beloved films. Well, Hairspray kind of is, but
Wild Hogs got a sequel. Come on, man, that was a success. Wasn't for us. Maybe,
I don't think it was a
successful movie.
It was. That's what I'm saying. I don't know that these are beloved movies, but they were successful. Old Dogs. It's not an actual sequel. I think it's just the same guys in a different movie about old people doing something.
That's close enough, right?
Sure.
But, lately, if you look at his film career in the last, 10, 15 years, it's all this kind of direct-to-video stuff. It's pretty sad. He did, though, get some acclaim for his role on the OJ miniseries, American Crime Story, playing Robert Shapiro. So he's not, he's not on that constant sort of B-movie level, but he definitely never got back to the movie star level he was at before this.
Well, that's true. I mean, I looked at of his upcoming projects. I noted down Cash Out 2, which means that Cash Out did well enough for it to be a sequel.
Oh, no. I just got a press release like 2 days ago about the release of Cash Out. So it's probably one of those things where somebody split their investment over 2 films for tax purposes.
So wait, is Cash Out just coming out now, or is that you got a release for Cash Out 2?
No. That's what I'm saying is that Cash Out 1 is just coming out now. In fact, yes. When this episode is released, it will already be out, so people can watch it and see if, in fact, it somehow turned out to be a giant hit. But as of this moment, no, Cash Out is coming out about a month from now.
He's also in a movie called That's Amore, which sounds like a big fat Greek wedding type thing. With it seems like some guy got him money to make a movie about 2 people who have, broken paths who end up together, and then their families get involved, and hijinks ensues, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, these movies that, like Battlefield Earth, seem like at least partial tax dodging schemes. I mean, Gotti, right? That's another notorious failure, notoriously terrible movie that wasn't that financed by MoviePass or something? And
I think so, yeah.
Turned out to be a whole scam House of Cards kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't know if he's making the best choices there in his career.
Yeah, well, we've talked about him. We've talked about Forrest Whitaker when we did Ghost Dog, and we a few other things. I think he's been on a regular on Awesome Movie Year. Barry Pepper has not, and by watching this movie, you can see why. But he is on Lawman, Bass Reeves, and I always remember him from Saving Private Ryan was the first place I saw him. But he's in the new Nate Parker movie with David Oyelowo called Solitary. A man in solitary confinement for 7 years comes out into a world of self-isolation.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think he can be good. I enjoy him in Crawl, the alligator attack movie, which is a really fun, kind of underrated film, and he's pretty good in that. And he's a big character actor in a lot of things. He does have the distinction of starring in both this and The Lone Ranger. So 2 incredibly famous flops.
Well, he did win an Emmy for playing Robert F. Kennedy in the miniseries. So if RFK Jr. wins the presidency, Pepper, you're on deck.
Yeah, I sure hope not for multiple reasons. Kim Coates, we've actually, I believe, talked about because he was one of the main co-stars of the Goon movies when we did our episode on Goon. And he is terrible in this movie, but he is so prolific that this was probably just a blip. I looked it up. He made 5 movies in this year alone. So I'm sure he spent a few weeks on Battlefield Earth and didn't even think about it as he went on to the next thing.
He's nailing it as a character actor. Most people know him from Sons of Anarchy or CSI, but on Broadway, he played Stanley Kowalski in Streetcar, and he was the lead in Macbeth.
Wow, that's impressive. What if Marlon Brando played Turl?
Rat Brain, I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse.
I feel like we've really reached the absolute end of whatever we can say here. So
we're done.
That is Battlefield Earth. And that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. You can call us Rat Brains online and on social media.
You can feel free to do that at awesomemovieyear.com, Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram, Awesome Movie Pod on Battlefield Earth, the platform. I'm at Jason Harris Comedy or Jay Harris Comedy on all the things. Go for Jason on Letterboxd. Check out Eat This Comedy, guys. We're doing shows again.
You can find some old stuff from me at joshbellhateseverything.com. I'm at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, at Signal Bleed on that terrible ex-Twitter platform, as well as on Blue Sky and on Letterboxd. And if you are on Letterboxd and watch any of the movies that we talk about, maybe you don't watch Battlefield Earth, and that's okay. But anything else, tag your reviews, Awesome Movie Year. We'd love to see what you think of any of the movies we discuss on the show. And you can listen to our producer, David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on social media at Piecing Pod and join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where I'd love to know if you're a fan of this movie, because I'm sure there's someone in there.
We know who you are.
Jason, what's in our next episode?
Josh, it's time to go to Cannes, the Palme d'Or winner. Apparently, Cannes hates happiness. We're reviewing Dancer in the Dark.
So tune in next time for Dancer in the Dark. And thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.